David Hooper, bigpodcast.com, and this is day number 7 of the 30-day solo podcast challenge. My job is to help you grow a big audience for your message. And the way we're doing that right now, it's via your podcast. This series is going to help you clarify your message. That's the number one thing you can do to attract and build a great audience. You're going to make more money because of this. Solo podcasting puts you out front. We're going to make you the go-to guy, the expert, the person that people want to listen to. And because you are the person, you're going to have more credibility with people. They're going to be more attracted to you. They're going to come to you. You're doing your pre-sales via your podcast. So if you sell anything, you've got a live event, you've got books, you've got other stuff that you want to promote. This is going to help with that because you are the guy, and experts get paid more money. Think about a brain surgeon. He's getting paid more than a general practitioner. Well, you're the brain surgeon of podcasting, my friend. Congratulations. If you have not heard the intro episode, that is the first thing that you need to do to get the most of this episode. That explains everything, the what and why of everything that we're doing here. bigpodcast.com/subscribe. That's going to get you hooked up on the intro episode. It's also going to get you hooked up on the previous day, day number 6. We talked about doing the opposite of everybody else. That's a great way to make yourself stand out. The focus of today is false beliefs. There's a reason why everybody else is doing the opposite of you, and it stems from a false belief. Again, this is connected to yesterday. We talked a little bit about this. There's a reason everybody thinks one way, and you think the other way. So that is my question. That's what I want you to record today. What are the false beliefs that your listeners have? You can see how this connects to the do the opposite philosophy that I mentioned yesterday. It's worth mentioning this again. I've done this throughout the series. This is a system. This isn't just random stuff that I'm throwing out each day. I'm taking you through a process that will not only help your hosting as far as your technique or speaking, it's going to help your podcast as far as content and how you present it, and it is going to make you the expert. As I mentioned just a minute ago, brain surgeon, you get paid more than general practitioner. Specialists get paid more, and that's what I want to see for you. I want to see you get paid as much as possible. I want to see people coming to you because you've got that reputation as a specialist. So let me give you an example of false beliefs. Again, this is connected to yesterday's episode, so if you have not heard day 6, I want you to go back and listen to it. The way to do that, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. So here's the false belief. Bigger equals better in podcasting. Now that does make sense if you were selling ads 1,000 people at a time. If you think all people are the same, 1,000 people is not going to be as good for you as 10,000 people. But the issue is that not everybody is the same. It's not widgets that we're talking about here. We are talking about real people. But that's how most podcasts think. They think all people are the same. And I mentioned yesterday about starting this broadcast radio show. That's how the station management was thinking. We thought, well, let's get the biggest audience that we can, and we'll bring in these big companies, Ford, Coca-Cola, big insurance companies that project their image to a lot of people. And for them, bigger is better because everybody needs a truck, sugar water, insurance. But it wasn't necessarily the best thing for us, and it wasn't necessarily the best thing for the people that we wanted to reach. It wasn't the best for us because reaching everybody was not what we were able to do with our specialized message. And it wasn't necessarily best for the people that we would reach, the true fans, because they don't want the general ads. The true fans, by the way, musicians. So what do musicians want? Well, they needed CD manufacturing, maybe album pressing. They needed guitar cables. They needed guitars. They needed recording equipment. Musician services, not just general things like a truck. Would it have worked? Yeah. Would it have worked as well as musician services? No, it would not. So stop thinking about your audience as downloads or numbers. We're not wrapping everybody up in a package just like a junk bond, putting those listeners in who are good matches, putting those listeners in who are bad matches, and putting them in a big package. That's not what you want to sell to advertisers when you go to them. Sure, those big numbers are great. Yeah, I got 10,000 people, 100,000 people, 150,000 people. That sounds great. But if you're going to a musician company, for example, Isn't it better if you said, I've got 5,000 people. They're all musicians. They are hyper-focused. They buy guitars. They buy amplifiers. They buy CD manufacturing. They buy record replication. That specialized pitch to advertisers is like music in their ears, because you've got these specialty advertisers, such as people in the musician market. That's the example for this. It could be any market that you're speaking to. They can't go to the big general shows, the big general media, the places that Coca-Cola, Ford, insurance companies can go to. They have very few options. And when you're one of those few options, what happens? You can charge more. So let's say everybody's getting $25 to $50 CPM. That's for every 1,000 people that listen to your message. You might have a white-hot audience that's 100% a very specific niche of people. And if you've got that, and that niche is hard for these companies to reach, that's worth well over the standard $20 to $50 rate to them. You've heard of Pareto principle, 80-20. 20% of the listeners get 80% of the results, meaning 20% of your listeners are buying 80% of the stuff advertised. Basically what I'm asking you to focus on the 20%, not the 80%. And that means niching down. That means really going for people who resonate with your content. This could be the specific thing you're talking about in your podcast, or it could be the specific belief system that you have and your listeners have. Meaning, if you've got a Christian podcast, you want to focus on the Christian listeners and speak in their language. Talk about Jesus. Don't talk about a higher power. And if you've got an atheist podcast or a New Age podcast, don't talk about Jesus. Talk about anti-Jesus, or whatever the opposite of Jesus is, or the universe, or whatever the New Age version of that is. Do not soften the message. Will you lose people? Yeah, you're going to lose people. You're going to lose people in that great big bundle, but you're going to focus on that Pareto principle. You're going to focus on the 20% that are giving you 80% of the results. And that is how you're going to get more money per listener from your advertisers. Today, my story took a little bit of a tangent because I wanted to use this as a teaching moment to get you thinking about these things as you form your message. But right now, let's get back to that message. I want you to get a pen and paper. I want you to outline your episode with 3 things. And while you were doing this, and take it back to what I just said, do not soften your message. I want to remind you of this as you're going through this process here with me, the 30-day solo podcast challenge. I want you to get behind the mic and I want you to go for it. You don't have to upload this. You don't have to release it. Nobody has to hear this. This is for you to experience what it would be like to have that complete power, autonomy, authority behind the mic that you eventually want to have. So go for it, man. Do not soften your message. As you're working on your outline, consider the beginning, the middle, and the end. In the intro, I want you to talk about how a belief makes sense. For example, it makes sense to have more listeners and more equals better. The meat of the episode, the middle, show why you have opposite feelings about these things. So yeah, that makes sense, but have you considered this? It's just the opposite, and it also makes sense. That's your meat. The wrap up, tied up in a nice little bow, a bonus if you can have an action step. And the action step for me is when you're doing this, do not soften your message. Here's another one. Stories are important. So I want you to add stories. Personal stories are best. I want you to keep that outline short and tight. 3 to 5 minutes is what I recommend. Do not overthink it. Hit record, go for it, go through, edit it, listen to yourself. And you took some chances on this one. So if you're feeling comfortable about releasing it to the world, I want you to upload it. I want you to send it to me. Bigpodcast.com is the website, and that's how to get in touch with me. If you want to go through Twitter, @DavidHooper is the way to get in touch with me there. That is it for today. One more thing. If you have not already, right now, before you hit record, before you forget, I want you to do this. I want you to go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I want you to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss what's coming up. This is a system. I'm taking you through a 30-day project. We've got the introduction. I've got 30 days of this, and we've got a conclusion. I'm going to walk you through this process. I'm going to make it as painless as possible. And as I said at the very beginning, you're going to be so smooth on the mic, so much better about getting your message out, and so much better at attracting the people that you want. When you attract the people that you want for your podcast, you're going to attract the sponsors and the money that you want. So go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Subscribe to the podcast. And while you were there, I've got a free podcast toolkit for you. I've got episode templates. I've got music licensing information. contracts that will make sure that you are using music legally and cover yourself so you won't get in trouble with any music publishers, record labels, nobody coming to get you. Get those contracts, get it in writing, protect yourself. I've got social media templates. There's a lot to it. It's a free toolkit. It's available to you. And everything I'm talking about is at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Congratulations. You have made it through the first week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. I'll see you tomorrow on the next episode of the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge.